continue. Om Namah Pranavartaya Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye Nirmalaya Prasantaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Apara Satchit Sukhavari Rashehe Yasyormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihinam Hridi Chintaya. My humble pranams. We had a marvelous program in the morning today. At 6 we had a recitation of the Ribhu Gita, the 26th chapter of the Tamil version, and quite an enchanting one. I just remembered a story in connection with Ribhu Gita. I shared this with Suma and Bala some time back. So with your permission, I will say something about that. This is a story narrated by Mahapiriyava of Kanchi about Shankara, and I will bring the connection to this. Adi Shankara went around the country, as we all know, teaching Advaita and establishing that Advaita is the supreme teaching that is mentioned in the Vedas. And he had to travel up and down a number of times, meet a lot of people from various religions, and in fact there were about 72 cults within Hinduism, harmonized them all. He had to do a lot of work. He did all that, and he became very popular in the country even at that time. But there is one temple in Tamil Nadu. The place is known as Thiruvidai Marudur. Marudur is actually Maruda Maram. The tree, the Sthala Vriksham in that place is Arjuna Maram. Arjuna, in Sanskrit, is Arjuna. Mallikarjuna's Kshetram is in Andhra Pradesh. It is actually the Shri Sailam, Brahmarambika Devi. It's a great Kshetram. And there is Arjuna tree as the Sthala Vriksham of that place. And in the south, in this temple that I mentioned, Thiruvidai Marudur, this is known as Madhyarjunam, Madhyam Idai, Idai Marudur, Thiru Idai Marudur, Madhyarjunam. So Madhyarjunam and Mallikarjunam are very famous in South India. The Brahmins of those days, and taking care of the temple, very great bhaktas, great scholars, but they did not accept Advaitam. And when people asked them, he said, no, it's, as far as we are concerned, we are not going to accept Advaita philosophy. So when Adi Shankara came to know about that, he was quite distressed. How is it that from our own region people are going to be objecting to this Advaita philosophy? What is wrong? Maybe they have an argument against it. So he wanted to meet them. So he had a chance to meet them sometime. He went to Thiruvidai Marudur and then talked to those Brahmins, asked them, what is your objection? They said, it is our custom to accept any Siddhantam or anything only when the God in the temple, he gives permission and gives approval. So take the approval of Mahalinga, the Ishvara's name is Mahalinga. So you take the approval of Mahalinga, then we have no problems in accepting your thing. So he was puzzled. Anyway, he went inside the temple and then he sang some verses in praise of, Mahalinga. There is a Mahalinga Ashtakam. But before that, he sang, seeking to give his approval so that these Brahmins can be convinced about Advaita philosophy. At the end of his recital, it seems a hand rose up above the lingam 3 times. Satyamadvaitam, 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 3 times. And everyone in that assemblage, they could see that actually, and then hear the voice also, the Ashariri also. Then the people of Thiruvidai Marudur accepted that Advaitam is a valid religion, and then they started following it. What is the connection with Ribhu Gita, you may say? Ribhu Gita is originally a Sanskrit The Moolam, the original is Sanskrit, one of the greatest of Advaita Granthas. And there is a translation for that in Tamil, which is what was chanted today in the morning. And Bhagavan used to say that the translation is better than the original. And it was done by one Bhikshu Sastri, and this Bhikshu Sastri came from Tiruvadai Maruduru. That is the connection. A place which rejected Advaita in the beginning produced a great Mahan later on who established Advaita in every sentence, one can read. And in fact, Bhagavan used to say that the 26th chapter that was chanted today, they keep on reading it, and the repetition of the truth in so many different ways has a forceful impact on you, gets into your mind, and you are able to do that. So this Bhikshu Sastri, after finishing Ribhu Gita, I believe he lost his eyesight. At a very young age, he lost his eyesight. And he did not know what to do. And it seems that was the time when some scholars met him and told him, your translation is very good, you have done a beautiful job, but you have not mentioned about the Saguna Brahman. That Brahman is not only in his, Nirguna aspect where there are no attributes at all, there is only one and nothing else. Devamun, all these things we keep on chanting in this. Sagunam is also important because that is the way in which people can reach this. So because you neglected this Saguna aspect, the Ishvara aspect, that is why it might have happened to you. Then he inserted under each chapter, under where all the other things are in 1 meter, this alone will be in a separate meter. He inserted a verse at the end of every chapter praising Nataraja. The Saguna aspect, but he is a Chidambaranatha. He is in the same Chit only, but in the Saguna aspect. When he inserted these verses in all the chapters, he got back, he regained his eyesight. So this is the story I wanted to begin with. We'll go to Devi Kalottaram. Yesterday we saw this verse where Ishvara says, Sadabhi bhuyate chittam nidraya smaranadina. Constantly the mind becomes weaker and weaker and weaker because of constant chintanam, constant thinking. Thinking makes the mind dull as far as realizing the self is concerned. Of course, in the modern world, one should really have the thinking capacity. A sharp mind is what is appreciated in today's world. But for spiritual glory, sharp mind is not the one that is required. A mind that can dissolve, that is what is required. Either through bhakti or through jnanam, the mind should dissolve itself. So a no-mind state is the highest state as far as this spiritual world is concerned. So here Ishvara says, Sadabhibhuyate chitram nidraya smaranadina bodhayitva. Train the mind. Again and again tell the mind, there is absolutely nothing outside. Go back to your own home, shelter at home. Prayatnena kuryate swastham punah punaha. Repeatedly you should bring your mind back into the heart. Keep it there. And that is the way to go. Today's verse. Yada sthiram bhavet chittam naiva chalyam kathanchana na kinchit chintayet tatra sthiramevatu karayet. A beautiful hint is given by Ishvara here. Chittam eppodu sthiramahum evvidattum attai chalipittal ahade ittanayum chindikka venduvathu indru. Indru here means not required. Indru, not today. Indru. Ange achittatai bandit nichalame panna is the translation of Bhagavan. What Ishvara says here is, when the mind which is constantly wavering, there are moments in which, it becomes peaceful and quiet. When you recognize those moments, Try to prolong those. Don't allow any thought to disturb this particular state of Nishchalatvam. Be very alert, because suddenly we will find, today we are able to meditate quite well. Gone. That thought will start so many other thoughts and the mind keeps wandering all around. So once it becomes, quiet, at that time, you should be very alert to see that no kind of a thought is entertained afterwards. Stiramevatu karayet, na kinchit chintayet tatra. When the mind is dislodged from the self, it will find its seat in thoughts. Once it is dislodged. And that's what we do. Unknowingly we do this by thinking about it. As I said, in the meditation, suddenly a point will come. What is this? This is a new state. This kind of a peace I have not experienced before. When such a thing happens, then from there the entire samsara begins. The whole thing, whatever you have gained, is lost. So here he says, be very alert. Be very alert to see that the mind is not Atma samstam manah kritva na kinchidapi chintayet, says Bhagavad Gita. Shanaihi uparamet buddhya dhriti grihitaya. Atma samstam manah kritva na kinchidapi chintayet, says Lord Krishna. Shanaihi, slowly. Shanaishchara gets his name because of Shanaihi. Shanaihi means slow. He is not Shanishwara, but Shanaishchara. He moves about very slowly, I believe. The Mars Griham, the planet Mars, I believe the time it takes to revolve around the sun is a much longer time. So he gets the name Shanaishcharaha. Shanaihi, slowly, gradually. Don't force it. If you force it, you try to suppress it, then you will not be able to, expect the results that will happen by this suppression are unexpected. So don't try to suppress. Entice the mind. Uparamet. Uparamet means entice the mind. Entice the mind to go and stay in the heart. Atma samstam. Same word that Ishvara is using. He uses the same word. Na kinchit chintayet tatra stiramevatu karayet. Keep it steady all the time and don't allow any thought to rise after these moments of peace are obtained. One has to be very alert. Meditation and all the sadhana is one of alertness. And this is what we lose. And when we lose this, immediately we find ourselves in the midst of all the thoughts. The next verse is Ashrayalambanam chittam tadvat kuryat nirashrayam. Chanchalam nishchalam kritva nishchalam natu chalayet. Same thing is repeated with different words. Moment it becomes quiet, don't disturb it. And he says, Ashraya alambanam chittam. If you watch, mind is active by catching hold of something. So try to see that the hold is loosened, the grip is loosened, and that thing, ashrayam, or whatever the prop or the support that you are holding on to, that is dropped by the mind. Bhagavan used to say that we think that the thinking mind is very solid because of the fact that we don't realize the thoughts rise and fall. They do not stay. There is a rise of the thought and there is a fall of the thought. There is a perception. There is a thought, a perception, an opinion, whatever it is, a feeling. It is actually a rising process and it falls down. And because it very quickly takes on once again, comes out once again, the falling down portion is not noticed by us. It looks as though it is a continuous thing, like the cinema that goes on. What is present to us is a frame by frame presentation. It's not a continuous thing. It is a digital and not analog. To use the modern language, it is not analog. It is digital. It goes up and comes down and stays there and then again goes up. Because of the quickness of the movement, we seem to think that the mind is a one solid thing, but no, it is actually a fragmented thing. And its fragments are there. So what Bhagavan says is, when once a thought goes down or subsides, the next thought will not arise unless the mind catches hold of some support. It is like a caterpillar. In one of the talks he says, compares mind to a caterpillar. A caterpillar, it stays on a leaf and then it catches hold of another leaf, lifts itself up from the previous leaf and goes to that thing. Like a caterpillar, he says, mind or the ego catches on to the next object, ashrayam. What is the meaning of ashrayam? Is a support, a prop. It catches hold of a prop, leaves the other one behind and then goes to the other thing. So if it is not possible for the mind to catch hold of something else, if you are going to deny that opportunity to the mind to catch hold of another object, mind does not move. Mind stops. Bhagavan says that only because of constant movement, this and that, and after that this, because of this thing, the mind keeps on expanding and the thought processes are going on all the time. So between one thought and the other thought, when the mind is not active, when the ego is not active or the mind is not active, what is there in that space between one thought and the other thought? It's a very brief space, but in that space what prevails is only the self. Atman is there. This Atman is known as Samvid. Samvid is that pure consciousness that is available to us all the time. But this Samvid gets fragmented by the mind all the time. So we don't even notice it. Though it is there, even now, here, at this time, we don't notice it because a thought has come, occupied your mind, and it is going to take you to another thought, another object, another support. Like that, it keeps on moving. But what is there is only consciousness. And the movement of the mind is completely hiding it. It is so very fast, even faster than the movie projection, that we are not able to see the background consciousness. But the background consciousness is all the time available. What we call as the background consciousness is actually the foreground consciousness for Bhagavan. That is the only thing that is available. Occasionally, he will be able to catch hold of some perception, meet somebody, say a few words, and then go back to that is his foreground, and our foreground is only the thoughts. That's the only difference. So, Bhagavan says, he quotes from Tripura Rahasyam, and he says, between one thought and the next thought, if you are able to watch very carefully, what prevails there is only the self. And you can see the same thing when the state changes. When you wake up in the morning from the deep sleep state, we have to be careful here. You have to wake up from the deep sleep state, and most times we wake up from a dream and not from deep sleep. That is the problem. So from the deep sleep state, when we wake up, Bhagavan says that portion actually is an evolution, he says. Self is pure as aham in the deep sleep state. And for a momentary period, the veil lifts. The veil that is completely hiding the consciousness behind, that lifts for a briefest moment of time. It's as though the curtain is removed and then closed again. When the curtain is removed, what is there is pure awareness. And that aham which is pure at that time, you have to catch hold of that aham. Because you will become familiar with what self is like, how to feel the self. Parichayam. You become familiar with that, because immediately it is going to become aham and idam. It is going to catch on to some. So he says it is pure aham in that small period before full awakening takes place. The thoughts have not started, the ego has not come up at that time, it remains as the pure self. And then aham rises along with the idam, and the whole process of the mental activity begins. So watch for this. He says, and he quotes from Tripura Rahasya. I will read the verse in Tripura Rahasyam that Bhagavan is referring to. Nidra Jagran Madhye Madhya Bhage Samvid Vedantare Tata Madhye Samvid Vedyayoscha. Vedyam is a perception. Between one perception and the other perception, what prevails is the pure self. Sometimes we would have experienced it ourselves. Something catches our attention. Beautiful scenery, a redwood. Momentary, mind goes there and it stays there. For a moment it gets stuck to that. A beautiful painting, a sunrise, a sunset, any scenery, good music. It catches your attention and the mind does not go. It stays there in that. And it leaves that perception and then it catches hold of something else, a new perception comes. Vedyaya, what is meant by Vedyam is that perception. In the midst of this perception, before it goes on to the next one, what prevails there is pure self. You can catch hold of it. So he says here, Sukshma Buddhya Abhilakshaya. This is an advice given in Tripura Rahasyam. And the same thing, actually it is very interesting that many of the Advaita Granthas, they mention about this transition state. In talk number 314, Bhagavan talks about transition state most of the time. It's a very important talk. 314 is about Avastatrayam. Similarly, 313, 323, these three talks are fantastic in their addressing this particular issue of Avastatrayam. So he says this transition state is very important for you. This transition state as a meditative technique is mentioned in all the Advaita Granthas. Tripura Rahasyam, Yoga Vasishtam. Yoga Vasishtam, Vasishta's advice to Rama is this: Nidradau Jagarasyante, the end of the waking state and the beginning of the deep sleep state. Before you go to sleep, your mind is fully awake, it is aware, awareness is full there, and it is suddenly going to disappear. This awareness is going to. Between this and the deep sleep state, the transition period, just like the sleep to waking, waking to sleep also, the transition period is very important. And then focus your mind on that transition period, that is self. Avastatrayam is to be learned only for this purpose, he says, in that 313. The purpose of learning Avastatrayam is only to catch hold of this transition state. I tried it so much. I found a mention of this in one of the books. I don't know how many of you came across this book. It is written by a lady by name Lucia Carnelson. She is a German lady. She is a Jewish person. She could not meet Bhagavan during his lifetime, but she knew about Bhagavan in a most miraculous manner. She was a Nazi staying in Germany during the war, and then she was she was a Jew trying to get out of Nazis grip, and she was staying in jungles and so on. She comes across a photograph of Bhagavan in one of her visits to one of the cottages in the jungle. They were all hiding at that time. And then that photograph really made her mind still. That's what she says. And then she wants to know who that is, and then she comes to know. But by the time she could gather enough finances to come to India, Bhagavan was no more in the body. So anyway, she comes here. She has written a marvelous book by name Hunting the Eye. I don't know how many of you heard about this book, Hunting the Eye. The very name is so beautiful, title is so beautiful, Hunting the Eye. There she mentions, she read this particular passage of Bhagavan about the transition state, and then she practiced it and she could not get it, but I believe she had a very solid sankalpam before going to sleep. I must wake up in full consciousness and catch hold of the transition state. And then she tried, and in one of the attempts she succeeded. She says she really got the transition state. When the idam did not evolve, the mind did not start its activities, it was quiescent, and there was full awareness. And she says that helped her a lot in her sadhana. So Hunting the Eye is a very, very interesting book and a very good book. So in Yoga Vasishtam, the same thing is said, Nidradau Jagarasyante Yo Bhava Upajayate Tam Bhavam Bhavayan Sakshat Akshayanandam Ashnute. This is what Vasishta tells. Catch hold of this transition state. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is supposed to be a Bhakti Grantham. There are many, many verses which are pure Advaitam. And there is a chapter known as Yati Dharmam in Bhagavad Gita. It comes in either in the 10th canto or the 11th canto. Yati Dharmam, where the advice, same advice is given, where he says, look for the state. One state leaves you, and before you jump to the other state, there is a period of pureness, purity. There is a period of pure awareness. Catch hold of that awareness. And in, Kashmiri Shaivism is almost like our Advaita Grantham. Kashmiri saints, the name is Kshema Raja, Abhinava Gupta. They have all written great granthas, Pratyabhignana Hridayam. Like that, many books are there. They're all pure Advaita, but of course, they say that instead of calling that as the Brahman, they call it as Shiva. That is the only difference. Otherwise, everything is the same. There, this Kshema Raja, he has written what is known as Spandakarikas. They say Spandanam is the same as Spuranam. Bhagavan explained it. Spandanam and Spuranam are one and the same. Where Spuranam is the pure state of Aham. Aham, Aham, Aham. Continuous. Without it catches hold of any idam, this Aham alone survives. So that is Spuranam, Spurti. Same thing is called as Spandanam by the Kashmiri Shaivis. In one of the Spandakarikas, one would find a similar mention about a transition state. So this seems to be a very popular meditation technique all through the earlier ages, and Bhagavan has once again talked about it. For a period there was absolutely no talk about this transition period, but Bhagavan has talked about it in his talks, and then he says the real benefit of understanding Avasthatrayam is to understand there is a state where one state is going to recede in the background, another one is going to take over, and in that interim period what you find is only that pure self. It is as though a veil that the covering lifts up, the curtain opens for a brief moment. Catch hold of that and be alert to do that. That's why he says here, Sukshma Buddhya Abhilakshaya. Be very, very alert to catch this. If you are able to do that, you are going to be very successful in your sadhana, and it is a very difficult thing. Anyway, somebody here may catch this. The next verse. Sarvabhuta laye jate yadvad vyoma sunirmalam tadvadrupam swakam dhyayet vyaptam chaiva sunirmalam. Nirmalam, sunirmalam. Extraordinarily pure. This is the meaning of sunirmalam. If vella bhuta ilayam undahil layam. Layam is, the dissolution that takes place. Even Nidra, even Sushupti is also called as Layam in some places. If Vella Bhuta Layam is all the elements, when in the Mahapralayam, when all these things which are called as matter, this matter gets dissolved, it gets dissolved into something that continues to remain as pure, which is the space. The space, even if galaxies are exploding, the space remains as it is. Nothing affects it. That's the meaning of this. Just as when the elements dissolve, they dissolve into that very, very subtle space. The subtle space is not affected by anything that happens. By water, by Agni, by any of the elements, the space will not be affected. There may be smoke, but immediately the smoke may clear and it becomes whatever happens to it. Everything will dissolve back into the Atman, and even though Atman is the support for everything, it is not going to be undergoing any taint because of association with any of the elements. The Bhagavan gives this particular example. In the screen, a movie is going on, and in the movie there is a big fire or there is a big flood. The screen is not affected. It does not become wet. It does not catch fire because there is a fire in the screen. It's just an appearance. Like the screen, this conscious space remains pure and it does not get affected by anything. There is a beautiful incident in Adi Shankara's life which is very well known to everybody. When Shankara was staying in Varanasi, one day he was going to take his bath with his Sishyas to Ganges. And Varanasi in the previous times used to be very narrow gullies. And in front of them, they observed a Chandala, an outcast, with 4 dogs coming in front of them. So Shankara stays there, and then he just requests him to move so that he can pass through the thing. Beautiful incident. Chandala at that time starts talking. Oh, great Brahmin, you are saying move away. Are you referring to this body to move away? Annamayat Annamayam. This is Annamayam. This is a foodstuff. This body is foodstuff. Are you saying this body which is made of foodstuff to move away from you? Athava Chaitanyameva. Or are you referring to the consciousness? Chaitanyameva Chaitanyat Vijavara. Oh, great one. Brahmana Sreshta Dvijavara. Duri Kritum Vanchasi. You want me to keep a distance. Kim Bruhi Gacha Gacheti. Move away, you are saying. Are you asking this body to move away? Is that your understanding? But if your understanding is that everything is only Chaitanya, which is what you are propagating, that's what he is indirectly saying. You are propagating everywhere, everything is only consciousness. If that is your understanding, can my consciousness move away from your consciousness? Can there be something like my consciousness or your consciousness? Can consciousness become a private property? There is only one consciousness. So obviously you are not meaning that consciousness to move away. Then why are you confused that I am this body, and why are you confused that you are that body? So, and he goes on. This is where this interesting thing. He goes on with other verses also. He says, Vijavara Duri Kritum Vanchasi Kim Bruhi Gacha Gacheti. And he says, Kim Gangambuni Bimbita Ambaramanau Chandala Vati Payaha Pure Chantaramasti Kanchana Ghati Mritkum Bhayorva Ambare. He says, the reflection of the sun on the drainage water of the slum area, Chandalavati, he says, in the slum area where all of us live, there is drainage flowing, open drainage, and the Surya is reflecting on that, and of course it is very muddy, the reflection is very impure. And a few feet away, pure Ganges is running, Gangambuni, in the Ambu, in the waters of Ganges, the pure Ganges, also the same sun is getting reflected, and there it is very pure. This bimbam is pure there and impure here, but is the sun impure? The sun, does he get affected by where it is reflecting? Are you getting confused by looking at the reflections? Are you getting confused by looking at the reflection of that same Chaitanyam has taken this body. And the reflection of the same Chaitanyam has taken your body. Can the reflections make a difference? And then he goes on again. He says, the space within a golden vessel in the Maharaja's palace, the space within a golden vessel in the Maharaja's palace, And the space which is there in the dirty mud part of the Chandalavati, in the slum area, is the space different between this and that? Does it get affected by the part that carries the space? Space is space, wherever it is. So he is talking about the two comparisons. In future, Advaita philosophy, I think I mentioned this, was going to divide into two schools of thought to really describe how Brahman has become limited to a Jivan. In that there are two opinions. One was known as the Pratibimbavadam, the Bhamati. If you can remember that, Bhamati. The Pratibimbavadam, other one is known as the Avichinnavadam, the limitation theory. The part limits a space and a larger vessel limits a space, but the limitation is from the point of view of the Upadhi, from the point of view of the part. A larger vessel, a smaller vessel, but the space within is the same. The mud part breaks, the space inside the part, where does it go? It does not go anywhere. It has always been there. It always connected with the outer space, and no movement in the space. Your mind has caught hold of the fact of the part breaking. And then you are saying that something has happened to this. We move a cup from one place to the other place. Does the space move? I take this cup and then move it. Does the space move? But it looks as though the space moves. Bhagavan used to all the time tell people, when somebody went and took leave of him, Bhagavan, I am going to Europe. I am going away from you. Bhagavan would say, who is going away? Europe. Is it in you or are you in Europe? This is the way he used to answer. Like yesterday Satya was saying, always there will be only questions. He would not give answers. His answers would be all questions. Is Europe in you or are you in Europe? So similarly, we all think that we are moving. Bhagavan would say that your body moves, but the Chaitanyam does not move. If you can catch hold of this one point alone, we will be liberated. Here the Chandala says, is the space within the golden vessel, is it more pure compared to the space within that mud part that is there in the Chandalavati? In that place where in the slum area, in that mud part, are they different? So looking at the Upadhi, we feel confused. That's what he is trying to tell this Acharya. Of course, later on, they say that Kashi Vishwanatha Swami himself came and then instructed, because no one else would have had the guts to say, talk to a Brahmin like that and instruct in this manner. Anyway, it doesn't matter whether he came or he was instructed. And after this only is this Manisha Panchakam composed by Adi Shankara. He prostrates to this Chandala and then says, whether it is a Chandala or somebody else, somebody who can give this kind of a truth is my Guru, he says. That is how the whole thing goes. That's what it means, Sunirmalam. Does the original stuff get affected, polluted? It always remains pure. Whatever be the body that it takes, that Upadhi may be different. It may be a worm in a drainage, or it may be a Maharishi. Whichever body it is the same. This realization should come to us. Then all the differences that we see will go away. Bhagavan said that, a jnani does not first think that you are not different from me. He says that the concept of difference at all does not rise at all in his mind at all. He does not resolve it later on. It does not rise at all. In a jnani's mind, the differences do not rise at all. He feels everybody is not different from him. So he saw everybody as a jnani. There is no ajnani in his sight. That is the way it is. So, tadvadrupam swakam dhyayet vyaptam chaiva sunirmalam. So, catch hold of this purest of the purest, which is not going to be affected, tainted by anything that it is associated with. If you meditate in this manner, then you will be able to catch that ultimate vastu, says Ishvara here. Then the next verse, he says, Tadeva janma sapalyam pandityam idamevahi. The greatest of achievement is only that. What is that? Chaladvayu samam chittam nischalam dhriyate hi santyat. He who can hold this mind, he is the greatest of heroes. Nobody else. Once you have tasted that anandam, the mind will not go after anything which is alpam. When the infinite anandam is caught hold of, who will have the heart to go after something that is alpam, insignificant? That is known as Bhuma Vidya. Bhagavan used to talk about a story of Tattvaraya and his guru Swarupananda. Tattvaraya was a great sage and his guru was Swarupananda. Swarupananda, on him he has composed what is known as Swarupasaram. But he has also composed a great work on his guru, and he called it as a Parani, in the form of a poetical form called as Parani. Parani is actually a Tamil poetical composition which is meant for great heroes in the war. It describes the valor of a great warrior. So people who composed Paranis, they were all composing Paranis on Maharajas who waged a battle. There was a great battle a few centuries back in the Kalinga region, in the Orissa region, and one of the Chola kings invaded that particular kingdom, and a lot of, millions of people, soldiers died on both sides and so on. It was a very gory war, similar to what happened to King Ashoka before he embraced Buddhism. Anyway, so a great poet in those days by name Jayam Kondar, he composed what is known as Kalingat Parani. Parani is about heroes. And I believe only when a hero is able to, murder or kill 1,000 elephants, he deserves to be, a Parani can be devoted to him, can be attributed to him. So you can't write Parani on anybody and everybody. Whereas this Tattvaraya, he wrote a book on his guru and he calls it as a Parani. Then the scholars of those time, and he was wanting to do the Varangetram for that particular thing, he wanted to say, this is what my guru is there, and so on. So a lot of people assembled at that time, great scholars. So he says, I have named it as a Parani. Then they said that, it is about whom? He said, it is about my guru. He has also waged wars and then won wars. No. He is a sadhu. He sits in one place and he meditates all the time. But how can you compose this particular meter and this particular way of describing him? Because he has not seen any war. This is meant only for wars, warriors. And the valorous heroes in those wars. So we will not accept this. So even before he began the whole thing, they said that we will not listen to you. So he did not know what to do at that time. He said, okay, let us settle this with our guru. So they all went with this person, Tattvaraya. He took them to Swarupananda. And then the guru saw them all. It was like a Sahajanishta, like our Bhagavan. So he wanted to know why they were all coming. And Tattvaraya went and told him, I did this on you. And I called it as Parani. These people are objecting to that. Oh, that is the one. Then he closed his eyes. And then Tattvaraya said, let us all sit. He is going to tell us, give us an explanation as to why this is valid stuff. So they all sat before him. When he closed his eyes, everybody closed their eyes. Hours went, days went, and there was absolutely no movement in their minds. All of them, hundreds of them sitting in front of that Mahan, and their minds were still. Not for 1 hour or 2 hours, not for 1 day or 2 days, for several days this happened. And finally, I believe the Guru moved his mind a little bit, and then everybody woke up at that time. And then they realized that they had gone through this period of silence for several days. And they said, yes, the mind is more powerful than one elephant, hundreds of elephants, thousands of elephants, and so many minds you could control by just, a trice of your thought process. You are able to control all our minds. You indeed are a great hero. In fact, you are more heroic than any other heroes that we know of. And they all prostrated to him and went away. This is a story that Bhagavan was very fond of relating. So that's what it is. Chaladvayu samam chittam. Vayu samam chittam. This mind which wanders about like that whirlwind. Nischalam dhriyatehi yat. He who is able to control that, he is a great pandita. Tadeva janma sapalyam. Make this your aim in life. The only aim in your life should be to make the mind still, not make it active. Activity of the mind is okay for earning our daily life. But if you want to really see the mokshanandam, mind has to become still. That's why all these things repeatedly, like in Ribhu Gita, repeatedly the same truth is told in so many different ways. Here the same truth of the importance of making the mind still is given. Tadeva janma sapalyam pandityam ida evahi chaladvayu samam chittam nischalam dhriyatehi yat. Aduve jananam adaindadan peram. Aduve. This is the only purpose in life, says Bhagavan. Only purpose in life is to make the mind still. Even the smallest effort to do that will go a long way. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat, says Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Swalpamapi, practice it even a little bit. It will come in good state. You are going to be saved by practicing this. So he says here, Tadeva janma sapalyam pandityam ida evahi. You become a great pandita. You become a valorous person. Chaladvayu samam chittam nischalam dhriyatehi yat. Adudane pandityamahum. Yadudan chalanam urum vayu samam chittam yendrum chalanam arachai sadhanam, says Bhagavan in this thing. So with this, okay. So next verse, I hope I am keeping you engaged. Naiva urdhvam dharayet chittam na madhyam napi adha kvachit antarbhava vinirmuktam sada kuryat nirashrayam chittatai மேலேயும் தாரணம் செய்யற்க. மத்தியிலும் கீழிலும் மற்றெங்கும் சித்தம் ஈது அந்தரங்க பாவனை விட்டு ஆශ්ரியம் இன்றியதாய் சந்ததவும் செய்திடவே தான். The Tamil translation says, Ishvara says, don't do the meditation with respect to any part of the body, neither up, not the middle, not the lower. This is again the same thing, meditation on a location of the body. If you want to get the mokshanandam, if you want to really do a proper atma vicharam, don't take a location for your practice. This is important because many people who came across Bhagavan's teachings, Bhagavan's talk about the heart, where Bhagavan says, I is originating from the heart. And he also says it is on the right side of the body, chest and other things. There is a very normal confusion or a mistake that people make of meditating on the right side of the body. A lot of people do that. In fact, they have also written about it. Locational dhyanam, by introducing a space element in the part of your dhyanam, will keep you in the mind. Because mind alone knows about space and time. Mind alone knows about the twin, space and time. And you are engaging the mind by trying to locate yourself or trying to catch hold of consciousness in some part of the body. Whenever Bhagavan said, see where the ego rises in your body, he was not talking about a location in the body. Though heart, he says, is on the right side of the body, he has also said in many places, please do not locate the experience, have the experience. You should have the experience rather than locate the experience in any one place. So the common mistake that people who are following Bhagavan's path of concentrating on the right side of the body has to be done in a very careful manner. Understanding of what Bhagavan says about heart is important in this. Bhagavan says heart is the seat of consciousness. That is, consciousness itself is the one to be held on to, not any part of the body. When you have the experience, that is, after having the experience, a jnani experiences some kind of an activity in the right side of the body, but by concentrating on the right side of the body, you are not going to get the experience. It is actually one way. You should not really confuse, it's a two-way process. That he says that the experience is here, so let us put our attention on this place. In Ramana Gita, in various other places, Bhagavan has made it very clear, heart is not to be confused with any part of the body. In fact, the confusion was more because in the Yoga Shastram, there is a chakram which is known as Anahata chakram, which is very close to the place where Bhagavan is talking about the heart. So people thought, okay, it must be the thing, and so they started combining this Yoga Margam with Bhagavan's thing. This rising the Kundalini through the chakras, already Ishvara has said that it is not really required. It is a process, a very valid process. Yoga Shastram talks about it. All that is good for purifying the mind and attaining the ekagrata. But if we are going to stop with rising the Kundalini through the various chakras and put it at the Sahasraram and leave it there, it's not correct. Because Sahasraram, that experience will not kill the vasanas. This is very important. The vasanas are held close to itself by the self in the heart, he says. The vasanas, all the tendencies, they are not in the head. He also mentions that once I had an argument with Kavya Kanta. Kavya Kanta, because he was doing all this dhyanam and other things, mantra dhyanam and other things, he kept on arguing with me that all the vasanas must be only here because the thinking takes place here, all the vasanas must be here. Then I told him, he says, and then I told Kavya Kanta, if that is the case, if you chop off somebody's head, you should not have any janmam at all. Will that happen? It is illogical to think that by chopping off somebody's head, you are going to give him moksham. Then everybody will be running for that. So it is not there. People who raise the consciousness up to the Sahasraram, that cranium, they should necessarily bring it back. Must be a U-turn for this Kundalini Shakti, and through the Atmanadi, Amritanadi or Atmanadi, that consciousness has to be taken back and then kept in the heart. And heart is the place where all the vasanas are gathered, and they are the one who are covering. In a metaphoric manner, he says the hole that is there in the heart, that hole is covered by the vasanas. So when a person dies, he carries the vasanas to the next life. And that's how the cycle of life and death continues. And the vasanas are there in the hridayam. So concentrating on some part of the body and then leaving it there is not going to be the end in itself. Kundalini has to be brought back, kept in the heart. And in the heart, when it enters, the vasanas also die along with that. And then what you enjoy is only the pure consciousness in the heart at that time. So that is why it is said, importantly, that antarbhava vinirmuktam, don't locate the experience, but have the experience. Have the experience by not providing any location to it, but by having that conscious feeling. Your conscious presence is available to you all the time. Pay attention to that conscious presence without worrying about where is it. So, this kind of a mistake one should not make, and it is given here. Meditating on the right side of the heart is not what is recommended by Bhagavan. Chittattai meleyum dharanam seyyarka. Dharanam means concentration. Concentrating the chittam in the brain or in the middle, in the anahata chakram or the other chakras, not required. Siddham idu, this is final. Antaranga bhavanai vittu, ashrayam indriyadai, santadamum seididave tan, Bhagavan says, and with that this particular verse also ends.